Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first Montessori Monday for the 2021 year. We are very excited to share with you our Seminar 1, which is how the Montessori method will shape your child. And I'm actually going to turn this right over to Miss Gay.
Hi, everybody. I am so very excited that you're joining us for our first session. This is going to be 4 weeks of a lot of great information and a lot of great sharing of ideas. We are just so very happy that you are joining us, and we want to go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, we're going to have a question and answer period in between. We have 2 sessions here tonight, 2 parts of 1 session. So we're going to have a question and answer period in between the second and the first sessions, and then again at the end. So if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them for you. I want to talk to you a little bit, first of all, about the goals of our evening tonight. We want to explore the Montessori method with you and have you learn how you can allow your child to be seen and understood. One of the most important parts of Montessori is respecting the child. And in doing so, we follow each child and their individuality, and we watch what they like and try to plug into that. So we want to teach you how you can actually become a guide to help your child become the best version of him or herself. We have 2 parts to tonight. The first part is Montessori 101, where we're going to do 10 highlights of Montessori. And the second part, after the question and answer period, is going to be how you can become a guide, your role as a parent. You're going to hear the word guide a lot tonight. Montessori teachers are often referred to as guides because we have such a different role as a teacher as opposed to a traditional teacher that we see ourselves as guiding the child. So we're going to show you how you can also be a guide to your child. When you are finished this, we're hoping that you gain a better understanding of the method of education, a little bit of the background, and understand where Maria Montessori was coming from and how she came up with some of her remarkable ideas. And we want you to then be able to apply that method at home. There's a triangle between the home and the school and the child. And Montessorians are always looking for ways to make that bridge between the home and the school stronger for your child and for your family as well. So I want you the next slide is going to be just a little 3-minute video about Montessori that I think you'll enjoy, and then we'll go from there with our Montessori 101.
Montessori education is based on the principles developed by Maria Montessori, who opened her first school for children of low-income workers in an apartment building in Rome in 1907. The school was called Casa dei Bambini, Home for Children. This first casa was furnished with a teacher's table, a stove, a blackboard, some chairs, group tables for the children, and a cabinet filled with materials that Montessori developed in her earlier career when she researched how to teach kids who experience some form of mental disability. Maria Montessori created the materials after she realized that students seemed to understand complex concepts better when they engaged all their senses. Activities at this first school included personal care, such as dressing and undressing, care of the environment, like sweeping, dusting, and gardening. Otherwise, they were free to move around and play with the materials. Montessori did not teach herself, but instead oversaw the classroom work of her teachers. Montessori observed that children showed episodes of deep concentration and multiple repetitions of the same activity. Given free choice, kids showed more interest in practical activities and the materials than normal toys, sweets, or other rewards. Over time, spontaneous self-discipline emerged. Montessori concluded that working independently, children seemed to reach new levels of autonomy and became self-motivated learners. She began to see the role of the teacher as a facilitator of young human beings who are free to move and act within the limits of a prepared environment. The goal? To grow children to become independent and responsible adults who share a love for learning. Soon after, Montessori herself and her ideas started traveling the world to inspire progressive thinkers and educators from all over. The inventors, Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison, became early advocates. Later alumni include Jimmy Wales from Wikipedia, author Gabriel Garcia Marquez, as well as the two Google founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Today, the term Montessori stands more for a method than a school itself. The fact that it can be used freely by anyone led to a great variation of schools. Educators all over the world borrow Montessori's name, insights, and materials to organize kindergartens, elementary schools, special needs programs, or even full 12-year curriculums. Some parents use it for homeschooling. The following characteristics are shared among most programs. Students are free to choose what to learn. Open classrooms that allow free movement. Use of specialized Montessori materials. Mixed age classes from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, or 6 to 12, so children can learn from each other. Uninterrupted blocks of study time, usually 3 hours. No grading or homework, and a trained teacher. Maria Montessori once famously said, "Never help a child with a task at which he feels he can succeed." What are your thoughts on Montessori? Please share your opinions in the comments below. Montessori education is based on the
So that was just a little 3-minute video, as I said, given a little bit of the background of Maria Montessori. She was the first female to ever get a medical degree from the University of Rome. She was originally working with children that had some learning disabilities or some mental deficiencies, and she was working and developing materials that she could use that would enable children with some differences, learning differences, to learn easier. And she realized that if she used them with children without learning differences, how much greater their education would be. So we're going to look at some Montessori 101 highlights. It reminds me of being back in college, Montessori 101. Let's take a look at the first 5 tenets. First of all, the Montessori method was developed, as we just learned in the video, by Dr. Maria Montessori. She observed children 100 years ago, and her observations and her method of education still aligns with developmental research that's done today. So it's pretty phenomenal, in my opinion. One of the most important, as I touched on before, is respect for the child. And the fundamental basis for the Montessori method stems from a deep, deep respect and caring for the children. We show them that respect in many, many ways. One of them is giving them the freedom to choose their own work in the classroom. That does not mean that it's a free-for-all or that they can just do whatever they want and they'll get their education when they get their education. Let them just, draw pictures or pour beans. It's definitely, it's a big misconception about the philosophy and the method itself. We give the children the freedom to choose the work, to move about the classroom, and movement is completely and utterly tied in with cognitive development. So it's very, very important, especially at young ages, that children are given the opportunity to move while they're learning. It spurs their intellect. I think one of her famous quotes is, "The hand is the key to the intellect." So we let them choose their work, move around the classroom in doing so, always making sure that they are moving forward when they need to. We give them the independence and the opportunities to correct their own mistakes. I would say 99% of all Montessori materials are self-corrective. The teacher does not want to be the person that is correcting the child. We want the child to learn from their errors, and therefore the materials that are self-correcting within the classroom, which, as I said, are the majority of them, show the child if there is a mistake made. And then the child can go back and figure out on his or her own how to fix that mistake. The teachers are always available to help them if needed, but Adults tend to want to jump in and help a child right away. And really, we need to give them time to figure out where their errors were and how they can fix them themselves. The method also gives the child the option to work at his or her own pace. I have had 3-year-olds reading in the same classroom with 6-year-olds who were, for whatever reasons, just not there yet. So the children move at their own pace, and when they master something, they move on to the next thing, that the next step in whatever it was that they were learning. We also give the children opportunities to use real words to describe and categorize things. Nomenclature in the Montessori classroom is an exceptionally important part of our day, and using the proper words for things are just one way that we are teaching the child, we're immersing the child in knowledge. A very, very, very important part of Montessori is the sensitive periods that all Montessori teachers are trained to look for. These sensitive periods are defined by specific age groups, and it's what children tend to master, what concepts and skills they tend to master at certain ages. And of course, this is not a cookie, no child is a cookie cutter child. So again, you might have a 3-year-old that's doing something that a 5-year-old is struggling with, but they work at their own pace and they go through these sensitive periods. So there's a chart up on the top here that you might be able to follow along with me, but just from birth to age 1 is random movements. And that's when they're just discovering they have arms and legs, and babies are moving about this way. That's their random movements. Then from 2 to 4, they have a sensitive period for order. And I know a lot of you might be thinking, my 2-year-old or my 4-year-old is not orderly. Just take a look at their playroom or their bedrooms. But in actuality, this is a very, very specific time for children's brains to start understanding order. And when they get order and concept down, that's when huge learning starts to occur. So if you have, take a look at your kitchen or your dining room table where you all have your family meals. Usually there's one seat that people tend to go to. The next time you all have a family gathering at your dinner table, sit in different places and see how that affects your child between the age of 2 and 4. They want you to sit in that chair because that's their sense of order is being attacked in their minds because you are not in the right place. Now, ages 3 to 4 and up, I'm going to say, because really I see this mostly in 5-year-olds. There's a sensitive period for writing. They love to write. I literally have children in the classroom just walking around with clipboards and paper and pencils and copying down everybody's name, every word card that they see, whatever they can see. They love to write. Now, we are also working at this time on proper pencil grip. But if your 3 or 4-year-old is in this stage of sensitive period of learning for writing, and they don't have their pencil grip down, there's many different ways, and I can go into that with you later, that you can help them with their pencil grip, but let them go ahead and write and do all those things that they need to do during this period. Now, the sensitive period for reading is actually ages 3 through 5. Now, when I went to school and when my daughters were in school, they didn't actually start teaching reading until about age 6 or 7. But 3 through 5 is the time that children are really sensitive to learning that. And they are in a Montessori classroom immersed in a phonetic language program. And they learn, we do not call the letters by their names, we call them by their sounds. And if you walk into any Montessori classroom, I guarantee you will be hearing children going k, at, p, I, g, constantly all over the place, because they are figuring out that the letter sounds that we have been teaching them put together form words. And they learn that. I'm telling you, it's just like an avalanche. It starts coming and it doesn't stop. And the final sensitive period is ages 4 to 6, and that's spatial relationships, at least the final sensitive period for ages 3 through 6. There's actually sensitive periods for all ages. Now, the prepared environment is the next step we're going to talk about, and that is the prepared environment in a Montessori classroom is a second teacher. When an environment is set up properly for children to learn within it, that is just as much of a teacher as I am. We set the classrooms up sequentially, starting from the most concrete, going towards the abstract, going from big to little. The shelves are low, so the children can get to everything within the classroom. Their furniture is all low. It's all child size. It's all there for them, and they don't need an adult to help them with it. It is aesthetically pleasing, the Montessori environment. The beauty of the environment has to call to the child. You want the children to see something new in the classroom, or see something that is new to them, to their eye in the classroom, and to see its beauty and want that to call to them so they will be interested in it. The materials are ordered, like I said, from simple to complex. And the prepared environment, believe it or not, supports a very calm and peaceful atmosphere, which is not to say that you walk into a Montessori classroom and there's dead silence, because that's never the case. But it is peaceful, and you can feel that peace within the environment. And part of that reason is because the environment is prepared for the child to be as successful as possible. The next thing we're going to talk about is the absorbent mind. And Maria Montessori coined this term, and she concluded that while children learn language formally, without any formal lessons to learn language, it must be because they literally absorb things that are in their environment and absorb things that are around them. So under the age of 3, there are very few lessons that you have to give a child, because the classroom itself, the whole world is a lesson to them. So like I said, she coined this term of absorbent mind to explain this phenomenon of children just being able to plop themselves into an environment and start learning. So we're going to go on to the next screen. And this is, these are 6 through 10 of the Montessori 101 things we were going to talk about with you. Number 6 is the whole child. The whole child approach encompasses and supports all areas of child development. So while we are teaching your children to read and to do amazing math things and talking all about different cultures and science and whatnot, we are also addressing their social, emotional growth as well. And as Montessori teachers, we're trained, again, like I said, to see where they are on that spectrum. So rather than just looking at the child as an academic piece, we look at the whole child. Now, independence is the next thing we're going to talk about. And we are so into teaching the children how to be independent, giving them the skills that they need to be independent, whether it's self-care, care of the environment, and they thrive on it. They absolutely love it. My kids in my classroom get so excited when I give classroom jobs out every day, because they get to show their stuff. They get to show everybody what they can do and how well they can do it. Again, we guide the children towards this independence, but the children initiate their own learning through repeating tasks over and over and over again. Repetition is huge in early childhood learning. And so if you see your child doing something over and over again, chances are it's how he or she is absorbing that knowledge and mastering that knowledge within himself. They also develop, when they're given these independent skills, they develop quite a sense of self-confidence and security in knowing that they can succeed when they put their mind to it. And sometimes it's really, really hard to let them do things independently when you want to get outside you have to leave for something, or we want to get outside onto the playground, an adult's inclination, I think, first and foremost is to help so the child moves quicker, but really that is not what we do. Let them take their time, be patient with them learning and zipping up their coats and putting on their gloves and their hats and whatnot, because the more we allow them to do that without our interfering, the easier it's going to come to them. The next thing I want to talk about with you is observation. Montessori teachers are given many, many hours of training in how to observe and what to look for in children, and how to observe a class while it's working, literally following the child. And that does not mean letting go of all rules. There are a lot of misconception about Montessori. Some people think that it's just a free-for-all, and other people I've heard say, well, it's so rigid and it's so strict, but that's not the case at all. In actuality, when we start a new school year, we quote unquote normalize a classroom. That's a Montessori saying. We normalize a classroom by getting the children to understand what the guidelines are, where their freedoms lie, and what those boundaries are. And once they understand those boundaries, they're free to go. And that's when we start following their likes, their needs, their desires. I had a child years and years ago who could not associate the symbol and quantity for 1 through 10. It just, something within him just was not allowing himself to learn how to do that. And so I started really paying attention to things that he would talk about with his friends. And I heard him talking about his Matchbox, is it Matchbox or Matchbox cars that he used to collect. So I went out and bought 55 Matchbox cars. So I could do a 1 through 10 symbol and association of symbol and quantity work with him. And as soon as he was using something that he loved, these little Matchbox cars as counters, he got it immediately. So we follow the child. We look to see how we can, if we can't get from point A to point C without, going this way, then we're going to figure out how to get there going that way. And finally, I wanted to talk to you about guiding rather than correcting a child. Children learn to be afraid of making mistakes. And so when they're afraid to make mistakes, they are then afraid to reach out and try something new. So they limit their exploration, and that limits their learning. So what we do is again, like I said, we had about 99% of our materials are all self-correcting, and we watch what they're doing and go back later and give another lesson on something if they were making mistakes that rather than me turning around and correcting and saying, oh, let's start this again, we just let them go, let them finish it. And I take note of what it is that they need help with, so I can I can go ahead and give them the lesson another time again. But one thing I want to really, really stress with you is that in Montessori, especially the early ages, it is the process of learning and not the product that's important to us. So therefore, when I'm teaching children about addition is simply putting numbers together to make bigger numbers. So if I have a child who is doing an addition work and he writes 4 plus 4 is 9, I don't turn around and correct him, because he did the process correctly. He took 2 numbers and he created a larger number from that. And with other works within the classroom, other memorization type of mathematical work that we have in the classroom, he will eventually learn that 4 plus 4 is in fact not 9, but it is the process that we are concerned about. So we can go on now to our question and answer before we go on to the next part about you being guides rather than me being a guide. First, I want to talk about this quote right here, free the child's potential and you will transform them into the world. That has such a beautiful quote with such deep meaning. And it's what I was saying before. Give your child all the keys to be successful, to feel successful. That's the way you speak to them, the positive language that you use, the environment that you create for them. And when they are comfortable with the fact that they can in fact learn and they can in fact do something well, that transforms them, and it's pretty amazing. So if there's any questions you might have right now, I'm happy to answer, or we can just go right on to the next one. Questions at this point in time, we'll go on to the next slide, which is parents as guides. Here we go. So I keep talking about teachers being guides, but parents are guides as well. And so I'd like to kind of walk you through with the next slide, kind of walk you through how we can transform your home into, bring CMMS to your home essentially. So let's talk to start with about observing and adapting. We want you to observe, like I was telling you the story about the little boy with the matchbox cars. Observe what sparks your child's interest and provide opportunities to pursue it and adapt as interests change. So you know your child better than anyone else. You know his or her interests. Zoom in on those interests and see how they can be used as teaching moments. Model, invite, and practice. So we are role models for our kids. The teachers are role models for the children in the classroom. Parents are the role models for their children. What we do, they're going to imitate. If you don't want your child to yell downstairs for you for something, don't yell upstairs for them either. Model the behaviors that you want your child to catch on to. Demonstrate a new skill to your child a few times, and then let your child go and practice it over and over again. That's how they learn. Once they get something down, and I'm not talking about teaching them geometry at home, I'm talking about just in general, once they learn something, once they grasp that idea, they're going to run with it and they're going to be so proud of their accomplishments. Engage your child in things. Meet those developmental needs that are based on the sensitive periods, that chart that we went through before. Practice real life skills. Part of the practical life area in a Montessori classroom, and I don't want to get into it too much because we have an entire session webinar, I think it's the third session if I'm not mistaken, on the practical life area and why it is so very, very important. But practice those skills at home. Let your child put his or her dishes in the dishwasher, help you set the table, put their clothes away, do those things, let them do all those things with you. Like I said before, my kids in the classroom, they love when they get jobs, like the sweeping job, being the classroom floor sweeper thrills them. So don't let them fool you. They can do it just as well at home as they do at school. Create an environment at home that encourages your children to help themselves and to help others. By doing so, I mean, have things, again, and we'll go through this in another session as well, but have things at a place, a height that they can reach and they can see, or have a little step stool so they can help rinse dishes and put them in the dishwasher. Create that environment and give them that opportunity. And then nurture inner motivation. Again, we'll talk more about this, but children are really more willing to do things when they feel there's intrinsic value to their work. There's intrinsic value and there's external rewards. And I know a lot of people grow up with doing external rewards, star charts, and well, if you get this many stars, then we can go out and get you your favorite candy bar or whatever. And although they, I understand why they're being used, it's the intrinsic value that we want the child to get. We don't want a child to do something because they're going to get a star for it or they're going to be externally rewarded for it. We want them to do something and do it well because of the intrinsic value of knowing you did a good job. And I'm telling you, to see that on a child's face, a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old's face, or any age in between, is incredibly uplifting and rewarding. So we're going to go on now to the next slide, if anybody, unless you have any questions about this one. And these are about the sensitive periods. We touched on them briefly before, but let's go over a little bit more right now. First of all, from ages birth through 3, let's look at that one first. We have sensory skills. So the sensitive period here is when children are fixated on small objects. And when a child first starts to learn, they learn through putting things in their mouths. That's why, kids always are putting things in their mouths. They learn incredibly sensorially. That's how they connect to things, especially when the world is such a new place to them. So what you can do is offer a variety of experiences to engage all of the senses. We have a whole section in our classroom that partially deals with learning through all of their senses. So, have a table set out for your child where he can feel things and smell things and taste things and put blindfolds on and try to determine through just the sense of touch what this might be. Give them those opportunities at home, but don't overwhelm the environment with a lot of experiences. In doing so, it's just going to overwhelm your child. Movement is another sensitive period at this age. Gross and fine motor skills between birth and age 3 are all developing. And that's when, like I said, it starts with their arms and legs, and then it kind of moves inward. So you can incorporate simple opportunities for gross and fine motor skills in your house. Get a step stool that the child can climb up on to look outside of a window. Get child size. They have child chopsticks that are attached. It's one piece, and they squeeze it to pick things up. Give them those things to play with. Tongs. They love to move things back and forth with tongs. Give them opportunities like that in the house. Recognize that basic self-care, like we were talking about before, is a very, very important thing for the children to learn, even at before age 3. So give them spoons, give them small cups to learn how to drink out of. They can do so at a much, much younger age than you would expect. Okay, so let's go on to the sensitive periods, our next slide, which is the sensitive periods for ages 2.5 through 6. So you have spatial relationships that are forming at this period, 2.5 through 6-year-olds. This includes the design of places that are familiar to them, the ability to find their way around a classroom or to find their way around their neighborhood, to do complex puzzles. So at home, you can take your maps out, you can take puzzles out. I used to have in my classroom blueprints of the actual classroom, and the children would trace them and try to figure out from the blueprints, literally walk, okay, I'm looking at the blueprint now, this is this area, I'm going to go find it in the actual classroom. Don't underestimate your child's ability to locate themselves in time or space and to see unique patterns and relationships, because they are really very capable of doing so. Social skills really start to develop at this age. They're no longer just playing side by side with someone, but playing completely different things. They can be taught how to give them, politeness. Grace and courtesy is huge in Montessori. And we teach them how to say thank you, when to say, how to ask someone if they would need some help, or how to let a teacher know that they themselves need help. So incorporate polite manners and ways of speaking. Let your child serve you dinner or whatnot. Would you care for some potatoes? Would you care for some green beans? And when the child says that to you and they're scooping your green beans and your potatoes onto your plate, you say yes, thank you, or no, thank you. Just modeling those social skills will really do a tremendous amount. Mathematics actually start at age 0, but through this sensitive period with ages 2.5 through 6, they begin to understand the idea of quantity, and the association of symbol and quantity comes at this time as well. So count everything, like hunt for numbers all over the place. Play games with the child, asking them to bring you 5. Go bring me 5 spoons. Now, please go give me 3 forks. Just numbers, just play games with them with that all the time. And don't let on if you have any bias about math at all. I know prior to taking my Montessori training, math was just like not my thing at all. I was always shying away from it. Once I took my Montessori training, I wished I had learned math at a very young age, because I all of a sudden understood so many things that in a concrete way that had been presented abstractly to me that I didn't understand. So if you have any biases about math, don't let on to that. Change that, try to change that, and just make it fun. Do things with them like, okay, well, here we have 8 pennies. Now, I want you to take 2 pennies and put them over there in that dish. Come back and tell me how many pennies we have left. Things like that. Just play games with them. Movement is also another big sensitive period at this age. Perfecting gross and fine motor skills. We do so many things in the classroom whose indirect purpose is the development of gross or fine motor skills. Table scrubbing. The children love to clean off their tables. That is gross motor skills right there. Pushing the paper towels or the rags up and down, always from left to right. And we also have materials in the classroom that strengthen their fine motor, their small muscles, using tweezers, using tongs, different materials that we have that you have to use the pincer grip in order for them to be successful. So it's all things like that. So you can do things like you can take 2 bowls with a bowl full of pom-poms on the left and an empty bowl on the right, and give them a scoop, or a ladle rather, and they will scoop those pom-poms from one bowl. It's gross motor, from one bowl to the next. You're showing them left to right directionality, which is reading and writing skill, needed for reading and writing skills. It's gross motor, and they're having fun. I'm telling you, go to the dollar store, and if you don't already have little knickknacks and counters and things that you can use in your house, and just load up on some bowls and tongs and fun counter things that they can move from one place to another. Let them pour. I'm telling you, they will love it. It develops so much in them, and you'll enjoy watching them too. Language is very much a part of the sensitive period at this time, and the ability to recognize patterns and listening to directions. When you're giving your child directions at this age too, take note as to whether they can follow how many directions can they follow? Can they follow 1, 2, 3-part directions, or do you need to break those directions down for your child? Instead of saying, we're about ready to go, so please get your coat on and I'll meet you outside, you might want to break that down. We're about ready to go. Can you go get your coat now? That kind of thing. Break it down for them if they need that. And then finally, order. Again, like I was talking about, order is incredibly strong. That's a sensitive period at this age. So you can do things for your children. And again, we're going to get into this very deeply when we talk about the bringing Montessori into your home, but you can put your child's toys in various bins that they know when they're done, this toy goes back in here and it then goes on that shelf, and this goes back in here and it goes in that shelf. Help them organize and give them that sense of order at this age, and it will stay with them for a lifetime. So I believe that that is it for our sensitive periods that we were going to talk about at this point in time. We're going to go to the very last screen, and that's just talking about our Montessori Mondays and anything that that we're going to be doing in the future. Next Monday night, I hope you all join us, and tell your friends and family to join us as well. Next Monday, we're going to talk about Montessori Heart and Soul, we like to call it, how to bring peace into your home and to how we do it in our classroom. The first Monday in March, Monday, March 1st, we're going to be talking all about practical life, which, as I said before, is an incredibly important foundation for your child. And every student that comes into a Montessori classroom goes right to practical life first. And it's somewhat misunderstood. And I hope that after week 3, you guys will completely understand it. And finally, the last one that we're going to do on March 8th is Beyond the Classroom, Montessori at Home. And we will talk about that invaluable bridge between the school and the home. So I am so happy that I got to share this with you tonight. I could have talked for a lot longer. Yes, thank you all. Thank you very much for coming. And we'll
Thank
see
you.
next Monday.
Thank you.